Tales of Vigilus. Commencing hostilities. The landing pad was lit by flickering lumen on tall stands, up which razor wire had grown like ivy. Iron spikes were driven into the ground around the pad's circumference, the bodies impaled upon them, reduced to contorted mummies by the passage of time. 4 sentries, renegade guardsmen in patchwork armour, prowled around the edge of the cracked ferrocrete expanse, peering out into the darkness in search of threats. They didn't look especially alert, thought Brother Gario, as he observed them through his autosenses. Good. That would make his task that much easier. A single battered-looking Arvus cargo lighter sat at the southern edge of the pad. It languished on rusted landing gear, the oily streaks and patches of verdigris on its hull suggesting the craft had not flown in a very long while. It was towards the dark bulk of this machine that Gerio directed his near-silent flight. The emitter vanes of his grav chute gave the slightest thrum of energy as they kept the ultramarine reaver aloft. He did the rest of the work himself, angling his body with expert skill and swooping down towards his chosen landing zone. 4 of his battle brothers were describing similar arcs of descent towards the surface of Nemdengast. He knew, aiming for the string of small cargo transfer pads that dotted Shamlock Ridge. Once, Imperial shuttlecraft would have thrummed busily to and fro here, ferrying consignments of rare ores and precision components so that they could then be borne onwards to Forge Endurance, some 50 miles north along Arterial 44. Now the skies through which the reavers fell were dark and vaporous. Where before the lights of labour settlements, auto-refineries and habstacks would have blazed all around, now the landscape below the ridge was wreathed in coiling shadow. The only light, beyond the faint halos of the landing pads, was the infernal glow on the horizon to the north, where the demon-tainted mass of Forge Endurance still loomed. This planet had suffered in the grip of the Chaos Gods, thought Gerio. Yet, right now, the devastation they had wrought and the darkness that they had ushered in also aided him in his duties. Quiet as a zephyr despite his armoured bulk, Gerio crossed the final 100 yards of his descent at the speed of a discharged bolt shell. At the last instant the energies of his grav chute flared, and he tucked himself into a crash roll. He hit the ferrocrete with a muffled thump and controlled his tumbles so that it carried him into the shadows beneath the defunct lighter. There the reaver came to a halt. He crouched beneath the rusted vehicle like an arachnid, listening carefully and sweeping with his helm's autosenses. If any of the sentries showed signs they had heard him land, he would have to act quickly. They had not. All 4 rag-swathed figures continued their slow patrols, at least 100 yards distant from the next and visible to one another only when they passed through the light pools of the lumen. "Arcturus, 3 down," Gerio said into his vox, secure in the knowledge that not a whisper of sound would escape his skull-faced helm. "Doesn't look as though the heretics expect visitors." "Received, brother," replied Sergeant Arcturo. "Make them pay for that." "In the Primarch's name," said Gerio, by way of confirmation, then killed his vox. He wondered for a moment how he would look should one of those heretics chance to peer under the lander. Huge, lithe, wreathed in shadows, the coals of his eye lenses burning crimson in his skull helm. He looked like vengeance, he thought. Vengeance and terror, and so would he be. Gerio crawled along the length of the lighter and eased himself out until he crouched beneath the craft's stubby nose cone. One heretic sentry was receding away from him, passing through a pool of light glare, then vanishing again into shadow. The next man in the chain was passing this way. Jerry could make him out using the thermal augers built into his auto-senses. He would pass before the Reaver's hiding place within seconds. Jerry could have burst from hiding, hurled stun grenades, howled his ultrasonic war cry, and gunned these heretics down in an instant. But that was not the plan. Stealth was needed for now. Dead was not enough. The traitors had to be silenced so that no word of the Ultramarines' presence escaped this place. And so, as his first victim passed before him, Jerry reached out and snatched the heretic by the face. He wrenched him off his feet and into the darkness. There came a dull snap of the man's neck breaking, a sound like knotwood bursting in a campfire, and the Reaver laid his corpse quietly beneath the lighter's nose. One down. He moved swiftly now, doubling back along the lighter towards the next sentry. Any moment, she would notice that her fellow was missing. Jerry didn't wait for that to happen. He burst from behind the lighter at a run. His victim had time to stiffen, her eyes to widen. Then he hit her, full force. The Reaver swept his victim through the shadows and clean off the landing pad. Jerry landed atop the heretic and heard bones crunch. He rose. She did not. 2. The Reaver kept moving, loping like a circling predator along his enemy's patrol route. With 2 already fallen, it was twice as likely that the remaining 2 would notice something amiss. That he could not allow. The Reaver stepped from the darkness just as his next victim entered a pool of lumen light. The heretic's moment of dazzlement was all Jerry needed. His fist pistoned out and curved in the man's throat, sending him crumpling to the ground. 3. 100 or so yards away, Jerry saw the last sentry recoil in alarm from this monstrous being that had just stepped out of nowhere to murder his fellow. Before the heretic could even reach towards the rock set he wore at his belt, Jerry's hand whipped out, and the metal flashed in the light. The last heretic staggered as the dagger struck him in the chest. He fumbled at the hilt, managed to emit a bubbling wheeze, then toppled forwards onto his face. Jerry swiftly moved the 2 corpses off the pad and into the darkness, then crouched down to clean his knife upon the withered grass. 4. Pad 3, clear, he foxed, and the confirmations came swiftly from his brothers that they too had finished their work. Excellent, brothers. Landing pad secure. Time to call in the strike force.